Welcome to Real Estates. I am Trina Larmony, and I'm joined here today by my good friend Alex Pearl. She's our resident real estate expert, and we are going to cover everything from A to Z for buying your first home. So get your pen and paper ready. You're going to want this information. Alex, I'm a first-time home buyer. Where do I start?
Great question. Just really the motivation or the need or the want. That's where we begin. And once we identify the reasons why you want to consider buying your first home property, investment property, then we can consider the financing and the location and numerous other criteria that are important to you.
Okay, so what would I start with? Finding an agent?
Yes, some people begin either finding an agent or finding a lender. But I would probably say 80% of the time or more, you're going to start with finding an agent, the right real estate agent. Somebody's going to help you navigate the journey of buying your first home, because there's quite a number of steps, and you want to make sure that the person that you've picked is knowledgeable, is patient, understands the real estate market, has contacts for you, communicates and helps to educate you. Because truly, by the time that you're finished with doing this the first time, a good real estate agent wants you to be fully educated and prepared for, the next go round.
Okay. What if I'm intimidated by what I know my credit score to be?
Right. And actually, a lot of people feel a little bit of anxiety about the credit score. They kind of feel like it's a reflection of them. They take it personally there, and most are maybe a little bit embarrassed about it. So I always say, hey, life happens. Don't be embarrassed. We've all had little things that show up for the most part on our credit score. Not a big deal. So at that point, again, my first-time home buyers, I take them to one of my favorite lenders who I know is going to be patient and communicative with my first-time home buyer, and they're just going to do a quick credit pull. We don't do a hard pull, by the way. We don't want to do a hard pull. We just take a quick overview about where do we stand? How much can we possibly afford at this point?
Okay.
Yeah.
When is a good time for me to buy a home?
Right. That's a personal question depending on the situation. Is your lease expiring anytime soon? So your lease is ending and you want to now, you don't want to spend any more money on making, rental payments. You want to start investing in yourself. So there's that. Or you have roommates that, it's not working out anymore. You want your own space. You've decided that you've outgrown your space. So again, if you're renting typically and you want to get into a place that has maybe instead of a 1-bedroom, 2 bedrooms, instead of 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms. So depending on your situation, that's how we're going to approach it. What's your motivation?
Okay, got it. Are you able to tell me and show me which neighborhoods are possibly the safest neighborhoods to live in?
Right. That's a tricky question and something that means different things to different people. So safe to you might be something that is safe to me.
Okay.
But really overall, that's a sticky legal question, right? I can't steer you towards or away from certain neighborhoods.
Right.
That's illegal. So what I do is I ask you what's important to you. Is it, a school district, are you planning on having kids? Do you have children? Do you need a school zone or district that has a certain rating? Do you travel? So is proximity to freeways or to the airport or even public transportation, is that important to you? Do you want a gated community versus a community that's not gated? And then in the end, because it's an important question for a lot of people, and that's part of doing their research, I'm going to provide for you a website, to the city that you're thinking about potentially living in. There's ways to finding out, crime mapping, different things like how many, the population, things like that. So I'm going to give you that information, and you're going to look it up and find it out on your own. And really, but in the end, what I like to do is, again, part of the education process, hey, let's go out and take a look. Let's go drive through these different neighborhoods so you get a feel for what an area looks like, feels like, and is it appealing? Does it feel like home in the
Okay.
end? Yeah.
So at this point, when we're driving through neighborhoods, have we already established how much house I can afford to buy because we've already gone to the lender?
Right. Yes, typically.
Okay.
There's sometimes a little bit of a lag when I will introduce my buyer to the lender, and the lender is doing their due diligence, their research on how much home, how much you can afford.
Okay.
But typically, most people actually have an idea about the range where they would like to be. So to get started, right, and to build on that excitement and momentum of, looking for your first place, we'll go out, we'll go take a look.
Okay.
I select, different homes that are within their ideal criteria. In
Okay.
addition to, most people, they start their search on their own online already. So they'll send me, hey Alex, we've been looking on this, real estate site or that one. Can I send these over to you? Absolutely, send them over.
Right.
Look them up, and we'll go take a look.
Okay, perfect. Do you steer someone towards the city or a suburb more for whatever their lifestyle is?
Right. It depends. Once again, it depends on what kind of things that they like to do, or where they've come from. For example, I've had clients who have moved here from, for example, the Midwest, right? So they're used to having land. It looks different. There's a lot of openness, spaces between homes, horse property, things like that. So if they want to continue with that kind of lifestyle, then yes, I'll definitely take them out a little further out from the city where you can typically find more properties that way.
Okay.
Other people, I ask them, well, not everybody has horses, but if that's something that they want, we'll go take a look.
Okay.
What I like to do is educate them. So again, we're going to take a look at some homes within their price range, typically, and we're going to check them out closer to the city. As with most big cities, the closer you get to the center of the city, the housing prices go up. The further out you go, you get more bang for your buck.
Okay.
So we take a look. If you don't mind a commute, and for some people a commute might be anything more than 10 minutes.
Right.
For other people it could be, 25, 30 minutes. So it just depends.
Okay.
And we go from there.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Let's say I found the perfect home. You've taken me out, you've shown me all these homes, I've fallen in love with the home. What's the next step? What do we do?
So it's a great time because finding a home is one of those things that you have to fall in love with. You have to have that feeling.
Oh, yeah.
And most people, I always say, go with your gut. You are going to know when you walk into a home if it feels right. And then you're going to make that judgment call, okay, yeah, this feels like home.
Right.
So that's the first step.
Right.
So the second step is, great. Let's take a look at what the numbers look like. People want to know, okay, so it's listed for X amount of money.
Okay.
Is that a fair price for this home?
Okay.
So my job is to take a look to see what recent sales have gone on in the neighborhood, and we price it out. We do what's called a comp, a comparative market analysis for them.
Okay.
So, and I'm going to provide that for you. So in addition to doing my own research and laying it out, I'm going to send that to my client so that they can see what the numbers look like.
Okay.
Not only going to send them to them, I'm going to send them the links to the homes so that they can look at the pictures visually and compare these other homes at these different price points versus the home that they're interested in. And from there, we're going to come up with a fair price to make an offer on.
So why can't, if we're looking at this is what they're asking for the home, rather than go through looking at all these comps, why can't we just get an appraisal and see, does the house appraise for what they're asking for the home, and then
Right.
just make the offer?
Right. You know what? Great question. So unless you are purchasing a home with cash, a cash purchase does not require an appraisal.
Okay.
Some people do that because they still want to know, are they getting what they're paying for? But most times people don't. But if you're using a lender who is financing, a lender will always order an appraisal for a property. And the reason that most buyers don't do it ahead of time is because a lender cannot use an independent appraisal's value for a home. It's just not how it goes. Not only that, an appraisal can cost anywhere between $300 to $600 out of pocket.
Okay.
That's a lot of money. I mean, that's not typically an expense that most buyers want to do, because now then the lender's going to order their own appraisal because that's the way they have to do it.
Okay.
So now you're going to be double paying, and they're not even going to use that independent appraisal that you've ordered.
Okay, so they can't even use one if I do
Right.
it myself anyway.
Now, that doesn't say that sometimes it doesn't happen if a value has come in on a house that's off, either way, either too high or too low, and then you go through the process of saying, hey, I think that, this appraiser has kind of missed the mark or the value on this, either way. And in that case, you would kind of, it's called petition. You would petition for the lender to do a reconsideration of the value of the property.
Okay.
And then if need be, you would go ahead and order a second appraisal. But okay, that's a whole different story, especially, for example, there are three types of most loans. It's conventional, where you would typically put a 20% down towards the value of the house.
Okay.
Or then there's FHA. Those are typically where you would only put 3.5% down payment towards the house. So you don't need to come up with the 20%, because 20% can be a large amount of money.
That one sounds nicer.
That's much nicer. And then, of course, there's the VA, where the VA loans, you don't have to put any money towards a down payment. So those are the three different types of loans. So again, depending on what type of loan, for example, conventional loans, if you need a reappraisal because the value is not quite right, it's easier to work with. If you're using an FHA loan, that FHA appraisal sticks with a property for 6 months. So I've had situations where I'm representing a seller, the buyer is using FHA financing, the appraisal comes in lower than we needed it to. We're kind of stuck. We're stuck with the low appraisal that's going to show up for 6 months. So, those are things to just be considerate of when you're going through this process. But back to your original question, why don't you do it ahead of time? And that's why.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. We find the home I want. It's $250,000. I've known situations where I was maybe pushed towards I should offer more. Why? Why would I offer more than they're asking for the home? I don't understand.
I don't want to pay more for my property. I don't want you to pay more.
Okay.
So it depends on the situation. For example, right now we are in a situation where there isn't a lot of inventory. That means there's just not a lot of homes available for sale for the amount of buyers that are looking. So the market right now favors the seller.
Okay.
So what happens is, well, if there's a great property, there are more buyers looking at this one property, which typically means that there's a multiple offer situation on these homes. So this home is lucky enough to be super popular, and it's received more than one offer.
Okay.
So when that happens, first of all, I go ahead and I make a phone call to begin with the listing agent representing that house. And I say, hey, Mr. Listing agent, I've got a buyer who's interested in this home. Are there any current offers on this property? And he or she says, well, yes, actually, we do. We have more than one offer on the property. Okay, great. So I have to go back to my buyer and I have to let them know, well, okay, there's already an offer on the table. Tell me how bad you want this house.
Okay.
Right? Because it's my job to determine, well, if you want this house within reason, I'm going to help you get that. Absolutely. Without having to overpay unnecessarily. Because I never want my clients to get into a situation where they are paying for a property that is overvalued.
Okay.
So that's first and foremost. I will always take care to make sure that if that's what's important to my client. Now, there are some buyers who are like, I don't care, I need this house right now. I need it no matter what. Okay, that's my job then to get it for you. But for, everybody else who has to be a little bit more cautious, because here's what's going to happen, right? We're going to go in, we're going to determine, okay, what do we think is the value that we need to offer for this home in order to beat these other offers?
And they can't tell you what the other offers are.
Right.
How
No,
do we
they're
know
not
they're not
supposed to have
playing
to-
hard to get, wink, wink,
Right,
and just
right.
giving you information that maybe is erroneous
Right.
to drive up an offer anyway?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is a negotiating tactic. Absolutely.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't, but you could get in trouble for
Yeah,
that. couldn't
absolutely.
You,
You still have to, absolutely. So, to begin with, when we are representing a seller and that happens, we ask our seller, do you give us permission to disclose if there is more than one offer on your
Okay.
property? But never at any point are we to disclose the amount that offer has come in. There are ways to try and understand where about the offer is in relation to price point. But legally speaking, and for the best interest of the seller, whoever's representing you, you're not supposed to disclose the actual value of the offers that are coming in. So that's where a good buyer's agent, again, will look at the numbers, the comparison of previous sales. Then they're going to look at that property, see how it compares. Has it been upgraded? The size of the lot? Is there a pool or not? How many garages? So there's these other criteria when determining the price of a home. And then we say, okay, so if we decide that the house is $250,000, we think that, okay, it's priced fairly. And if they've received more than, one offer, we might go in slightly below or we might go in slightly above. Now, there's a strategy there. We know that if we go in over the 250, okay, I say, okay, well, there's the opportunity perhaps that if we win the bid, the offer war here, now the bank's going to come in and do their appraisal. There might be the opportunity that the bank determines that the house isn't worth the price that we've offered above and beyond. So we have the opportunity to negotiate again the value that the appraiser has determined. So there are different steps along the way.
Okay.
But first and foremost, we determine how badly do you want that house and what is a fair price for it.
Okay. So if we offer $265 for this house,
Right.
we're not married to that 265. Oops, 265.
Right.
Just because if it doesn't appraise for that, I don't have to be. I'm not committed to 265 if the bank won't give me that money.
Right. Right. And here's why. That's a great question. Okay. So when we are writing, back to when we're writing an offer, right? Here we're determining we're going to write an offer, and within this offer that we're writing, there are different timelines and deadlines that protect the buyer, which means that there are different opportunities that if something doesn't feel right or we cannot come to an agreement, that the buyer has the opportunity to back out of the deal without losing their earnest money deposit. And just to clarify, because I know you're going to ask me what's an earnest money deposit. Yeah. It's right. So you'll hear the word EMD thrown around.
Oh, okay.
So earnest money deposit, that's the amount of money that the seller is requesting that the potential buyer submits to an escrow company to hold the property, to take the property off of the market so that nobody else can try and buy it.
So that's after they've accepted the offer.
Right.
Okay.
Yes. So that's at that point. Once we've negotiated the contract, but that's one of the terms of the contract.
Okay.
The earnest money deposit, that's the amount of money that's going to be deposited so that the seller knows that our buyer is serious.
Okay.
Hey, Mr. Mrs. Seller, this is the amount of money we're gonna deposit so that we're serious about buying your home, and we would like for you to remove it from active status on the market so that we can go through this process of purchasing it.
And do I get that money back?
Right. If
I buy the house.
Oh, okay. Right.
How does
yes.
that work?
Right. Well, then the earnest money deposit, that EMD, goes towards the down payment.
Okay.
So that's the amount deducted from whatever the amount of down payment that you're going to put in.
Okay.
Whether it's 20% or 3.5% of a down payment, that money is reduced from the necessary amount of down payment that you need to submit.
What if the earnest money deposit amount exceeds my down payment?
Right. Well, in the case where it's a VA loan, it absolutely does. Then you get that reimbursed at the end.
Oh, okay. Okay, perfect. That's good to know. So can you explain to me this crazy word called escrow?
Right.
What is escrow? Because I
Right.
know escrow can be different lengths of time.
Right.
I don't understand any of that.
Right. So escrow is so you'll hear title and escrow, and here in Nevada, quite often they're within the same company.
Okay.
So an escrow company, what they do is they are a neutral third party that is in charge of handling the paperwork between the buyer, the seller, the buyer's lender. If the seller still has a mortgage that they're paying, so
Okay.
then the seller's lender as well. And then they're also communicating with myself as the buyer's agent in addition to the seller. So they communicate, they're handling, they're like a control tower, really, is what they're doing.
Okay.
They're handling all of the communication between all the parties to
Okay.
make sure everything stays neutral. So a neutral third party is what they're doing. That's who handles the paperwork. So they're holding the money. When you make that earnest money, because a lot of buyers are like, I'm giving this money, and,
Right.
and the seller, how do I get it back from the seller?
Okay.
It doesn't go to the seller. It goes to the escrow company, and they hold it.
Okay.
And it can't be released until both parties say it's okay.
Okay, so we're in escrow. At what point in all of this am I able to purchase a home warranty for all the little things that might go wrong in the first, however, and how long do they last?
Right.
What do they cover?
Right. So that is part of what we're going to negotiate when we're writing an offer as well. So this offer that we're writing is a contract, and that is one of the things that typically I will ask for always. Unless, of course, we're in, again, a multiple offer situation and every dollar counts when we're trying to win that offer. But typically, we ask for the home warranty up front in the offer. That's what we're going to do.
Wait, when you say we're asked for it up front, are you saying we're asking the seller to pay for it for us?
Yes.
Oh,
yes,
okay.
we are. It's no different than when you're going to think about purchasing a pre-owned vehicle, right? You feel better knowing that the dealership is going to offer some kind of warranty, right, for
Sure.
this car. It makes you feel more comfortable. It
Right.
kind of gives you a little bit more of the warm fuzzies about knowing, okay, if something happens, I'm covered. You know, it's a type of insurance, and it lasts a year. So when you purchase it, it starts the day that you actually get the keys to your new house,
Okay.
and goes a year through. And so it would be something that you have to then purchase on a yearly basis after that.
So tell me, at what point do we do the walkthrough of my new house?
Okay. So we're writing your offer, and within the contract, we are going to decide what day would you like to get your keys, right? So we have the lender help us with that because it's the lender who is actually doing the paperwork, and they're going to tell us how quickly they can get through their paperwork to determine that, yes, this is the amount of time we need to fund your loan, to give you the money for this house.
Okay.
So when they're not completely overworked, they can close, meaning they can do their paperwork 21 days from the day that the contract is signed by both parties.
Okay.
But the typical amount of time ranges anywhere between 30 days and 40 days to get it done. If there's holidays, in between, like right now, there's 2 holidays, in between when we might close. I have 2 escrows right now, and we have allotted for a little bit of extra time because of the holiday season in there. But so let's say we're going to do 30 days, 30-day escrow. The lender says, I can get this done in 30 days. Great. So then we're going to say, okay, the first 10 to 12 days, we are going to ask for something called due diligence, which is a big deal.
Oh.
Due diligence is, we don't want to skip over that. That's the time where, okay, we've signed off, we both agree that the seller agrees they want to sell and the buyer agrees they want to buy, and we like these terms, we've agreed on them. Okay, now starts the due diligence period. So that's when the buyer will submit their earnest money deposit into escrow, and that's when we're going to have the home inspected. So that's a really important step. You want to make sure that you have a licensed inspector come, and they are going to look at all the nooks and crannies and plugs and outlets and under sinks, head to toe, top to bottom. They're going to look at this house, and they're going to determine what it looks like. Does it need any repairs? Are there any items that might be a little, alarming or hazardous? So they write a report.
And this is the inspector.
This is the inspector.
And this is separate than an appraisal.
Yes. Typically, the inspection will happen before the appraisal. So the inspection will happen within the first 10 to 12 days. Again, due diligence can last anywhere from 5 days to 10 days. These are all negotiable terms, but typically you can get an inspection done between 10 and 12 days. That means the inspector goes out to the house and looks at the house. They write a report, a nice detailed report. They hand it to the buyer and myself, and we talk about it. We don't typically stress over things that are cosmetic because we know it's not a brand new house. What we want to look for is anything that might be considered hazardous or dangerous. Smoke detectors, and make sure that they have batteries in them. Any leaks underneath the sink, any outlets that might not be working, any cracks in the foundation, things like that.
Isn't there a time where, I don't know how old the house might be, but there was a time there was lead paint. So
Right.
What happens if the house has lead paint?
So any house that was built prior to 1968, we always have to get a disclaimer about whether or not there was lead-based paint in the house. So, but again, the inspector, he'll know that. He or she will know that. And if we need an extra layer of protection or an expert in that field, then we call them out. So the inspector is just the first step. And if they know, hey, this HVAC unit, the air conditioning, not really working properly, then we call out a contractor that specializes in that field, because we want to make sure that we have the right people looking at it.
Okay, so you told me that for the appraisal, I'm looking at $300 to $600.
Right.
Do I also pay that inspector guy?
You do. Right.
Okay. So what does he cost?
Right. Okay. So when we are considering, looking at when I am counseling my buyers, I always tell them, okay, so there are 2 upfront costs before we close that will come out of pocket, well, actually 3. So the earnest money, 3. Well, the earnest money deposit. But that goes towards your down payment. Yeah, that comes up. So there's that. Then there's the inspection, and then there's the appraisal. So those are the 3. And the inspection, depending on.
Write this down.
Yeah. It can vary on the size of the house. But it's typically anywhere between $250 up to $600, again, depending on the age of the house and the size of the house, and whether or not it has a pool or a spa, a casita, things like that. So those are the costs, the 3 costs that a buyer will come out of pocket prior to actually getting the keys to their brand new house.
So I heard about a phrase called leasebacks. Tell me, what is a leaseback? When would I, as a buyer, run into a situation where I'm in a leaseback situation?
Okay. So leaseback is when the seller isn't quite ready to vacate the home or the property on the agreed upon date that is supposed to be their move out date and the buyer's move in date. That actual date is called the close of escrow date. So that's the day that they've got to be out, and then the new buyer gets their keys and they actually get to move in. That's legally when they own the home. Now, a leaseback happens when, for some reason, and it happens, the sellers are not in a position to move out of the house yet. So in order to protect both the seller and the buyer, you actually have a separate little contract. It's like a little short-term rental, and it's called a leaseback. So you give them anywhere between a day, a week, a month, a couple months, depending on the situation, for the sellers to remain in the house, be paying some sort of daily or weekly or monthly rental, again, depends on the time, until they are ready to move out. And
what sort of heads up would you normally get? I mean, because I'm ready to move. I've already called the movers for my things. So How am I finding this out 2 days before I'm supposed to get my keys?
Right. In most situations, it wouldn't happen. It does happen sometimes where for some reason at the last minute, if the seller is, they're buying a new home and the home that they're going to close on didn't close on time, so they can't move. It's like a trickle down effect. But if it's not that kind of situation where it's last minute, and that doesn't happen quite as often, you would know about it up front when you're writing your contract. A good seller's agent will say, hey, thank you, hey, just a heads up, or they would put it in the notes, the agent notes in the MLS, seller can potentially need a lease back, so that my buyer has time to prepare, because there's nothing worse than preparing. And there's expenses and moving expenses, changing utilities, taking time off from work. Those are all big deals that if something happens last minute, doesn't happen.
Right.
There's a lot of stress and anxiety that can go with it. But if not, you take care of it up front, you negotiate that part of it, and you just know that, okay, well, yeah, we're gonna close. We're going to legally own this home on a certain day, but that's not the day we're going to move in. The sellers will stay until the time that they've asked for.
Okay.
Or negotiated.
I want to go back to something because we've already now gone through. I've already done my appraisal. I've gotten the loan. I'm closing escrow. I'm walking through. I wanted to go back to something that I wanted to mention before. Let's say I see a short sale.
Right.
I've seen short sales in my neighborhood, and I have to be honest, the price that house is listed for looks significantly lower than the price of my house.
Right.
So why wouldn't I want to go make an offer on that home?
Right. And that's a question that comes up a lot. A client will see, a buyer will see this property that's priced so fairly or below comps in a neighborhood, and they're like, hey, I'd like to try and make an offer. So again, so depending on what lender owns that short sale property, and so let's talk about what a short sale property is, right? Because not everybody knows what that is. And that is typically when the current owners of a property have not made their payments, their mortgage payments, so they fall behind, right? And then the lender, the bank or whatever private institution they've gotten their money from, gives them a certain amount of time to catch up on their payments, right? Or make arrangements. But still, for some reason, the owners, they just can't. They can't, and they don't want to lose the house, meaning they don't want the bank to take the house from them.
Right.
And that's called a foreclosure. Because when the bank does that, now you've lost any opportunity to try and make a little bit of money or even come out ahead on your property, because the bank's going to take it and they're going to keep any money that they can possibly make. But a short sale just means that, okay, the owners have decided, okay, we're going to get out of this house because we just can't continue to make the payments. And they will work with the bank and they will price the home to get a fast sale. Okay. Now, here's the tricky part that a lot of people don't understand. Oftentimes, there's money that's owed on this property, whether they haven't, if it's in a community with a homeowners association or HOA and they haven't paid their HOA, there's a lien on the house, meaning these owners owe different people money.
Like a mechanic's lien.
Like a mechanic's lien. That's if a contractor has done work and you haven't paid the contractor. Now, they're like, well, hey, okay, you're not paying us and we can't collect, but we're going to collect when you go to sell this house.
Right.
So we're going to make sure we get paid. All this stuff comes up when you go to try and sell the house.
Right.
So, again, there might be late on their utilities.
Okay, I want to stop you there because this actually, I experienced this. I found a beautiful home in a beautiful neighborhood, and I couldn't believe the price. I was in shock of the price of this home, and the people weren't in it anymore.
Right.
And we wanted to move forward, make an offer, and this house had back utilities to the tune of thousands of dollars.
Right.
It had back taxes to the tune of thousands of dollars. And like you said, it was a gated community with a century. It wasn't just a regular gated community. There's a man standing there. And again, thousands of dollars this home was behind. I think there was around $36,000
Right.
that needed to be caught up
Yeah.
on liens against the property outside of this short sale
Right.
price tag that we didn't know the bank would even accept.
Right, right. So there's a couple steps there, absolutely. So, I mean, depending on the situation and how far back they're behind, the new buyer will sometimes have to make some of those payments.
Okay.
But that's not to say it can't be done. And I mean, there are deals to be had. It just has to be the right situation. But again, that's part of your due diligence process. When you have a good buyer's agent and you embark on potentially, buying a property that's in a short sale situation, you have to look at all of these things.
Okay, so when I'm looking at a short sale, I'm not just looking at my earnest money
Right.
or my appraisal money or my
Right.
inspector money. Now I'm looking at this fourth cost.
Right.
And you said something about this earlier, and I do want to go into that because it's something that people might not consider too. The expenses of moving, the expenses of possibly turning on your utilities. And if you don't have a history with having utilities,
Right.
you're likely going to have to pay a deposit.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
So-
Not only that, I mean, it has to be, I mean, it's a big deal. When you go to move into a home, right now, you've got, and it does get a little stressful. This is what I call sometimes the icky part. You do kind of feel like, okay, now you've paid for, again, you've paid for this appraisal, you've paid for the inspection, you've got your earnest money deposit in, you're still looking at making some sort of down payment, right? The remainder of the money that's there. And then there are these soft costs, meaning like, the amount of money that it's going to take to move, whether you're going to rent, a U-Haul, or if you're going to hire movers, you still have to try and take off some time from work.
if you're going to buy a bunch of beer for your friends to do it for you, you have to factor all that in.
Whatever it is, right? That would be in addition to these other expenses when you're considering a short sale or even a foreclosed property. There's just extra cash sometimes that has to come out of pocket that the lender doesn't pay for.
Okay.
That comes out of your pocket.
Do you have any type of, when you have a specific buyer, do you have a checklist that you give them so that they know, like, I would hate to end up in my new property and get in the shower and go, oh shoot, I didn't know I had to turn the gas on.
Yes,
you have,
absolutely.
Okay.
I have a checklist.
Okay.
Every step of the way, so that at no point do I ever want my buyer to wonder what's going to happen next.
Right.
So we go through, okay, this is what it looks like to talk with a lender to get pre-approved. This is what the contract looks like. Then once it gets accepted, these are the deadlines and timelines.
Okay.
I send them a full email.
Okay.
Here's who your title and escrow company are. Here's who the lender is. So we have all that. In addition, I always make sure that they never ever sign anything that they don't know they're signing.
Right.
Quite often this is the first time that they're seeing a lot of these forms and documents, and not
Especially
only the offer. Yeah, exactly. Right. And then there's just like random transaction forms. Say, hey, if this is a property in a homeowners association, you have to sign off saying, okay, yes, I know that this home I'm buying is in a homeowners association community,
Right.
and things like that. But yes, I give a checklist so that they know up ahead of time. And also when we are about to submit an offer, in addition to talking to the lender, I provide something called a net sheet. And most good buyer's agents will do that. And a net sheet basically is your cheat sheet that talks about numbers, the finance part of it.
Okay.
So not only the down payment, not only the title and escrow costs, the property taxes, the homeowners association, because if you purchase a home in a homeowners association, they will take usually 1 to 2 months of prepayments up front. So these are all costs that I would like my buyer to know ahead of time that they're going to be paying towards, so that they're not surprised at the end, like, wait, whoa, I thought it was going to be this, but it's like $5,000 more, whatever it is, something like that. So.
Okay, so it sounds like if you're my agent, I'm not going to run into any surprises. You've got all the bases covered for me. Tell me some mistakes that you've seen first-time buyers make, or some pitfalls, maybe not with you because you've covered everything, but I know you've probably seen it all. what pitfalls are there for the buyers out there that need to know, I got to avoid this, and I got to go find Alex so that I avoid these problems?
Yeah, so there's no surprises. So first and foremost, definitely when at the point where we're talking to a lender and the lender is going through my client's finances, there's the always say, hey, don't go out and buy a brand new car. Don't buy a brand new car right now. Don't buy a brand new boat. Don't even open a new credit card account or any lines of credit.
Right.
Like, just don't do it, because it messes up the numbers that the lender is trying. I mean, they do a debt to income ratio. They have to consider the price of the property and, and your income, in addition to any other expenses like your car payments and this and that. So always, I'm like, before you spend any money, like anything over $100, come talk to me first.
Okay.
Let's just double check.
Now you're telling me that like we've already gone and met the lender.
Right.
We've already gotten my pre-approval letter.
Right.
And now I know I can go get this home. I know I'm ready to go. You're telling me that after I've done all that, don't go circle back around and change my financial situation.
Right. I mean, they're starting out, so the numbers are really tight, which is totally normal. I mean, that's how most of us start out with.
Right.
It's not a reflection of how you manage your finances. That's not what it's about. It's like, hey, we're starting out and we're going to do this. And so sometimes the numbers are super tight. So I always say, like, just before you do anything, check. Like I just so I'm working with two first-time home buyers right now. And I give that, I'm just like, hey guys, before anything happens or if anything changes, call me first. So I got a text message the other day and she was so cute. She's like, hey, so the bank accidentally closed one of my credit cards that I hadn't used for a while. So they just closed it without my knowledge. And she was really, really worried because she's like, does that ruin my loan? I'm like, it shouldn't. It should not be a big deal. Don't stress. Let's reach out to the lender. And again, I always make sure my lenders are always available so that they can, shoot off a quick text. And then she wrote back, she's like, you were right. Okay, not a big deal. Stress avoided. I'm like,
awesome.
Those are the kinds of situations.
Okay,
So, yeah.
perfect. Okay, so I bought my home. I love it. I've lived in it a few years, and I think I'm ready to upgrade. I think I'm ready to move on. So now I'm going to go from being a home buyer to a home seller.
Right.
And now, does the due diligence apply to me on that side too, or is that a buyer thing? What do I have to do now?
Yeah, it's a little bit different.
Okay.
For sure. Hey, what are the homes around you selling for, right?
Okay.
I never just make up an arbitrary number. It's not like I pick a number out of a hat.
Right.
Everything that I do is based on data and what's happening. So that's what we do. We say, okay, so, these homes in your neighborhood that are within, your model match or very, very similar, this is what they've sold for. And we sit down, we look at those properties. Because if there's a range, we want to understand why the range. You know?
Right.
Okay, well, this is the same model, but it's got a bigger lot, or it's got a pool, or your pool's 20 years old and this pool is brand new. So we're going to look at it. We're going to determine a price for your home. You're going to feel great about it, right? Okay. And the most important question I'm going to ask you is, okay, well, what's your motivation, right?
Okay.
So it's usually price and motivation and time. So when we talk about that, that's going to determine where we're going to price your home. If you need to sell right away, we're going to price it competitively so we get the most eyes looking at your house. If you have some time, we're going to go a little bit higher. We're going to see, what kind of activity we get, and we're going to test it out that way. Because of course, the end game is always to make you the most amount of money for your home in the least amount of time, and hopefully as stress-free as possible. So, again, so you're thinking about selling your home. We're going to do a comp.
Okay.
Okay. We're going to determine the price. We're going to figure out your motivation, why you're moving.
Okay.
Meaning time-wise. And then comes the fun part. This is where we're going to work together. We're going to get your house ready. We're going to get your house, because how you live right, is different from how a potential buyer now wants to see your home.
Sure.
So we're going to walk through the home, no style or any of those things, but we're going to declutter. We're going to make sure that you're taking out. You're already going to start packing anyway. So I always say, the more you start putting away, the more money in your pocket.
Okay.
That's a good way to think about it.
Okay.
Really, what I need now at this point is I need as much of a blank canvas as possible.
Right.
Because then we're going to stage your home.
Okay.
Again, this is one of my specialties. This is what always helps to sell my client's home.
I've seen your work.
Oh, yeah.
Every time I see some of your houses you stage, I'm like, oh, I want to buy that house, but I already have a house.
Yeah. Well, that's what we want. We want the wow factor. We want to give that buyer, right, that emotional connection to your home, because that's really what drives people. We need an emotional connection, and then we're going to look and make sure that that's the right fit, right? We look at the money, but we have to bring somebody in first.
Right.
So we're going to stage. Sometimes I use their furniture. Sometimes it's a vacant property. I can work with both.
Okay.
I supplement. Or I bring in, whole rooms of furniture, couches, sofas, tables, kitchen tables, bar stools, things like that.
Okay.
So we're going to stage the property, make it look amazing. And after we've done that, then I'm going to have a professional photographer come in, take beautiful pictures, because you have about 3 to 5 seconds to capture somebody's attention when they're online looking.
Girl, I have seen some property pictures that I don't even, I think they couldn't turn the lights on, maybe take them during the day.
How about when the toilet seat is up, okay? Yeah. Like, we really don't need to see that. Nobody wants to see that.
Right.
Sadly, the agent who has taken those pictures is doing such a disservice to their client.
Why is it going to benefit me more to go with you and then have to pay a fee to an agent than to do a for sale by owner and try to sell the house myself directly?
Right. And that's a really good question. And that's a question that a lot of people are asking, because here's the deal. Typically, it's called a FSBO, is a little term, for sale by owner versus
FSBO, that's cute.
FSBO, yeah. So a for sale by owner versus having an agent represent you. That agent is going to be able to get anywhere between 13% to 16% more for your property than you would on your own. And that's just, and faster.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know anybody who enjoys having their house linger on the market and have random people walking through.
Right.
I mean, that's uncomfortable. So my service, my houses go, if a typical amount of time is 30 days, I do half of that or faster.
Okay.
Yeah, always hands down. I can quantify 85 to 90% of my homes go within, a week or faster, depending on the market.
Wow.
I've had a home that has gone under contract after 5 hours on the market. If somebody walks in, they fall in love, and that's the best case scenario.
Right.
But nonetheless, all of my homes sell faster than what is the typical average days on market.
Okay.
And that's really what we have to know. And we'll look at that when we sit down and we're like discussing what the numbers are. It gives me those stats on my website. I can tell you, okay, this is the average days on market, and here's what I'm going to do for you. Okay. So, go ahead.
Well, I wanted to ask you this because you said the house is going to sell for 13 to 16% more than if I try to sell it on my own.
Right.
What's a typical commission that goes to the agents in this selling scenario?
Right. And that's always negotiable. So there's not ever a standard.
What's the max that I might be looking at?
I guess I've seen it 7%. Usually it's 6%.
Okay. Well, either of those are still below the 13 to 16%.
Right. Absolutely.
That I'm going to make on my house.
Right.
So I'm going to net money positive.
Right. So your return on the investment, right? Because it's an investment.
Okay.
Absolutely. What we're doing, first of all, I make an investment in your property before you even have to spend a dime.
Right.
I mean, I'm typically into a property anywhere between $3,000 to $6,000 before we even like hit the market.
So I don't have to pay for this amazing photographer to come in and
No.
do all these beautiful.
No.
Like I don't have upfront costs as a seller. Just I sign a contract with you and let you go nuts.
Right,
It doesn't
right.
cost me anything.
No, it doesn't cost you
Oh,
anything.
that's fantastic.
Right. The only upfront cost you might find is when we go through and you tell me that maybe you had a leaky faucet, or toilet, you have something that is loose that needs to be tightened.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to suggest, hey, we're gonna try and get the most out of your house.
Mm-hmm.
No potential buyer likes to see that there might be something loose or broken.
Right.
It just gives them a red flag.
Oh yeah, because if there's something I can
Yeah,
see,
right.
what's going on that I can't
Right,
see.
right. So I
Okay.
always suggest fix any little thing that you can ahead of time, within
Mm-hmm.
reason, for sure. And then everything else I do. Yes, that's part of my cost of doing business.
Okay.
So I'm going to stage. I'm going to have professional pictures taken.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to market your home,
Okay.
right? I mean, we have to market. We have to
Yes.
let everyone know about your amazing property ahead of time. And, now we can do open houses again. So open houses, hosting those kinds of events. I mean, it's all inclusive into my service.
Tell me about some closing cost hurdles that I might run into.
Okay, so closing cost hurdles as a seller.
Okay.
So again, we talk about just like when you were a buyer and we negotiated the home warranty for you.
Yeah.
Typically, I will say this is negotiable. However, it's nice to, if they're asking for a home warranty, it's good to provide that home warranty because again, it makes your potential new buyer feel more comfortable about taking the leap of purchasing your home. So that's a cost, but that'll come at the end, when we're wrapping up and we're actually getting closer towards closing day. There's that.
If I've got 10 offers on my property,
right.
do I want to do that? Do I have to do that?
No, you don't. Absolutely not.
Okay.
No, absolutely not. So, I mean, if you don't want to, you don't have to.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Let's say you're my agent selling my house and you're bringing your own buyer in to look at my house.
Right.
I don't want to say where does your loyalty lie, but
Right.
obviously I think integrity-wise, you
Yeah.
want to do the best job for both of us.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's actually something that we talk about up front.
Okay.
Before we've even hit the market. We have that conversation. How would you feel if I brought in a potential buyer now for your home? And there's no pressure. I mean, some people are okay with it because I will tell them that I'm a good, excellent agent that will say, okay, I value confidentiality above all else and your interest and their interest. So I can do it, but I'll tell you most times I refer it out just so that
Okay.
there's not a conflict of interest.
Okay.
And honestly, when my clients say, well, I don't know how I feel about that, I said, just say, you know what, I'd rather you not. I'd rather you just represent me. And if you have a potential buyer, you know what, let's give it to somebody else. Absolutely. Because I never want anyone to feel like there might be a conflict of interest
Okay.
at all.
So what are my closing obligations so that I can hand over the keys to this wonderful new homeowner and I can move off on my journey on my new house that you helped me buy?
Right. So once, so I'm going to back up because I think there was another small spot where a seller might have to spend a little bit of money, and that's again
Okay.
at the home inspection. Right now, the buyer has had your home inspected, and they've asked for a couple of things to be repaired. We talk about that, and
Okay.
again, if it's something that a lender, because believe it or not, the lender wants to make sure that your house is solid.
Sure.
So if there's something that potentially the lender wants you to fix, we typically have to fix that, like an HVAC, like heating or air conditioning unit, or even just brand new smoke detectors,
Okay.
things like that. So if you have to fix anything, that would be an expenditure that
Okay.
you would do ahead of time before we close to make sure that the lender's happy with the repairs and the buyer's happy with the repairs.
After I do my repairs, does the inspector come back out again?
He could.
He could.
He could,
Okay.
absolutely. And he would do that during the final walkthrough.
Okay.
So before we actually close on the house, the day that we exchange keys, the buyer would come in anywhere between 2 to 5 days before that to check, to make sure that the house is in the same condition that it was and that anything that needed to be fixed was fixed properly.
Okay, perfect. This has all been amazing information, and I just want to say this, and I know this isn't really part of this subject, but I want to share with people some information that you may not realize, that your credit score doesn't have to be 800 to buy your own home.
Yeah.
And I want to also share that you could be a first-time homeowner and not even realize it. You may think that you're not able to purchase a home and that you have to rent a property or have roommates and rent from them. You may not realize that you could be paying less in your own mortgage and investing in your own property than you could be paying to rent someone else's property and building their equity. And I think enough people don't know that. And it's very personal to me because I didn't know that when I was 27 years old when I bought my first house. I learned it from interviewing a girl that I was hiring that was a single mom that owned her own home. And I said, excuse me? I'm a single mom. You can own your own home. Like, I'm your boss. I should be able to own my own home. So I think enough people don't realize that. And I think you are one that you're such a caring person that you could really help people live a different life than they thought they could live.
It's interesting because a lot of people feel really insecure, financially almost, about it, you know, and for whatever reason, they feel almost sometimes embarrassed. You know, they're afraid to let somebody peek into their, you know, financial situation. And I truly, what I really want people to know is try. You never know. You never know what is available to you depending on your situation. And it doesn't hurt to try. You know, meanwhile, if you're renting, you know, rents continue to increase, you know. Right now, a lot of times people, if they're renting a home, the owner, the landlord, decides they want to sell the house, you know, and you have to deal with moving again unexpectedly.
My daughter just went through it. Yes.
You know, dealing with people coming in because you have to let, you know, an appraiser come in and the inspector come in. You know, and again, you're not building your own equity. You know, it's your first real investment, you know, and, you know, sometimes people feel like, oh, you know, I have to try and make, you know, this much money off the first year. Well, no, typically it's a 3 to 5 year, investment. And you know that you're going to purchase it for this amount of money. And, you know, in a nice, stable economy, it's going to appreciate, you know, anywhere from 2% and higher. But it's typically like 2 to 4 to 5% every year. So that when you're ready to move, now you've got some money that you've made in the house, you sell it, and if you've outgrown the space, you can upgrade, you know, from there. And that's how people build on, you know, home ownership, from going from their first place up to something that might be, you know, bigger when they're ready to start families and things like that. So I would say just try. It doesn't hurt to try. It costs you nothing to try.
Absolutely. And don't be embarrassed.
No, don't be embarrassed.
Can you imagine you own your own home and you're sitting home not owning your own home just because you might be embarrassed? So, Alex, this has been amazing information. I hope you guys took notes. I'm super happy with the information that you shared with me today, and you broke it down Trina style so that I can understand. And I just want to thank you for all that information today, and I want to thank you guys for joining us. Alex, I'm ready to get into some real estate, so tell me, how do I get in touch with you?
Call me, text me, 702-592-5999. I'm happy to talk to you, happy to answer any questions you might have. There's no silly question, random question, you know, embarrassing question that you might have. Just send it on over. Let's have a conversation.
Perfect.